By late June 1939, the situation at Khalkhin Gol demanded decisive leadership. The early phases of the conflict had revealed serious shortcomings on both sides, but the Soviet High Command recognized that incremental adjustments would not be sufficient. A fundamental change in command and operational approach was required. To address this, Moscow appointed Georgy Zhukov as commander of Soviet forces in the region. At the time, Zhukov was not yet the legendary figure he would later become. However, he had already demonstrated competence, discipline, and a willingness to challenge conventional thinking. Upon arrival, Zhukov conducted a comprehensive assessment of the battlefield. He identified several critical weaknesses in existing Soviet operations: poor coordination between units, insufficient use of combined arms tactics, and a lack of decisive offensive planning. These deficiencies mirrored problems seen earlier in the Winter War, though Khalkhin Gol will provide an opportunity to correct them. Zhukov immediately imposed stricter command discipline. Communication lines were reorganized, and operational control was centralized. Unlike previous commanders, he insisted on precise coordination between infantry, artillery, armor, and air forces. A key element of Zhukov's approach was preparation. Rather than launching immediate attacks, he focused on building strength. Reinforcements arrived in large numbers, including tanks, artillery, and motorized infantry. Supply depots were established, and logistical routes were secured. Zhukov also prioritized intelligence and reconnaissance. Detailed information about Japanese positions, movements, and supply lines was gathered. This allowed Soviet planners to develop a clear picture of the battlefield, a stark contrast to earlier phases marked by uncertainty and improvisation. Training intensified. Units rehearsed maneuvers repeatedly, emphasizing coordination and timing. Combined arms operations, which integrated armor, infantry, and artillery, became central to Soviet planning. Air power was fully integrated into the operational framework. Soviet aircraft were tasked with achieving air superiority, disrupting Japanese supply lines, and providing close support to ground forces. This integration marked a significant evolution in Soviet doctrine. Zhukov understood the psychological dimension of warfare. He recognized that Japanese forces relied heavily on offensive spirit and morale. By applying overwhelming force at decisive points, he aimed not only to defeat Japanese units physically, but also to undermine their confidence. Meanwhile, Japanese commanders underestimated the significance of Zhukov's arrival. They continued to rely on aggressive infantry assaults, dismissing Soviet preparations as defensive posturing. This miscalculation would prove costly. By July 1939, the balance at Khalkhin Gol had begun to shift. Soviet forces were no longer reacting. They were preparing to dictate the course of the battle. The stage was being set for a decisive confrontation. Zhukov's command marked a turning point. For the first time, the Red Army would fight at Khalkhin Gol on its own terms. What followed would redefine modern mechanized warfare in Asia. By August 1939, Georgy Zhukov had completed his preparations. Soviet forces at Khalkhin Gol were no longer a reactive defensive formation, but a coordinated, mechanized army poised for decisive action. The counteroffensive Zhukov plan will be one of the earliest successful examples of large-scale combined arms warfare executed by the Red Army. Zhukov's plan was based on encirclement rather than frontal assault. Instead of attacking Japanese positions head-on, Soviet forces would strike simultaneously from multiple directions, isolating Japanese units and cutting off their supply lines. This approach contrasted sharply with Japanese doctrine, which emphasized direct engagement and offensive spirit. The offensive began in mid-August with a massive artillery barrage. Soviet guns saturated Japanese positions with sustained fire, targeting command posts, artillery batteries, and defensive concentrations. This preliminary bombardment was designed to disrupt coordination and weaken resistance before ground forces advanced. Armored units followed the artillery. Soviet tank brigades, operating in coordinated formations, advanced rapidly across the steppe. Infantry units moved alongside armor, providing protection against anti-tank threats and securing captured ground. Air support played a critical role, striking Japanese rear areas and supply routes. Japanese forces were caught off guard by the scale and coordination of the attack. Their defenses, optimized for infantry combat, were poorly equipped to counter mass armor. Anti-tank weapons were limited, and Japanese artillery struggled to respond effectively under heavy bombardment. As Soviet forces advanced, they executed a classic double envelopment. Northern and southern spearhead converged behind Japanese lines, severing escape routes. Communication breakdowns compounded Japanese difficulties, leaving isolated units unable to coordinate counterattacks. Logistical collapse followed. Japanese supply convoys were destroyed or cut off. Ammunition shortages became acute. Medical evacuation was nearly impossible. Units trapped within the encirclement faced dwindling resources and mounting casualties. Japanese commanders attempted repeated counterattacks to break the encirclement. These efforts, often conducted with great determination, resulted in heavy losses. Without armored support or air superiority, Japanese assaults were repelled by Soviet firepower. The psychological impact of the counteroffensive were profound. Japanese troops, accustomed to offensive operations, now found themselves surrounded and under constant bombardment. Morale deteriorated as the reality of defeat became unavoidable. Soviet command maintained relentless pressure. Unlike earlier phases of the conflict, coordination remained intact. Units advanced according to schedule, reinforcing success and preventing Japanese regrouping. By late August, the encirclement was complete. Japanese forces at Khalkhin Gol were effectively destroyed as a fighting force. Survivors withdrew in disarray, leaving behind equipment, vehicles, and artillery. The Soviet counteroffensive achieved decisive results. It demonstrated the effectiveness of combined arms warfare and validated Zhukov's command approach. For the Red Army, it marked a significant operational success. The battle had reached its climax. The initiative had shifted irreversibly, and the outcome of Khalkhin Gol was no longer in doubt. By late August 1939, the scale of the Japanese defeat at Khalkhin Gol had become undeniable. What had begun as a border dispute escalated into a catastrophic military failure for the Imperial Japanese Army. The destruction of Japanese forces in the encirclement marked one of the most decisive defeats Japan had suffered since the Russo-Japanese War. Japanese casualties were severe. Estimates varied, but losses included tens of thousands killed, wounded, or missing. Entire units were rendered combat ineffective. Equipment losses were equally devastating. Artillery pieces, vehicles, and supplies were abandoned or destroyed during the retreat. The structural weaknesses of Japanese doctrine were exposed. Infantry-centric tactics proved ineffective against massed armor, artillery, and air power. Japanese forces lacked sufficient anti-tank weapons and had limited experience countering mechanized warfare on this scale. Logistical failures compounded battlefield losses. Supply lines collapsed under Soviet pressure. Medical evacuation was nearly impossible. leaving wounded soldiers untreated. Heat, dust, and exhaustion further weakened already strained units. Command failures played a central role in the defeat. Japanese field commanders continued offensive actions even as conditions deteriorated. Communication breakdowns prevented coordinated withdrawal or regrouping. Central Command underestimated the severity of the situation until it was too late. Morale deteriorated rapidly. The psychological impact of encirclement, sustained bombardment, and air attacks undermined confidence. Soldiers trained to value offensive spirit found themselves unable to respond effectively to modern combined arms warfare. Soviet forces, in contrast, maintained operational coherence. Encirclement tactics were executed methodically, preventing Japanese escape and ensuring destruction of isolated units. Discipline and coordination remained intact throughout the final phase of combat. Attempts to counterattack failed repeatedly. Without armored support or air superiority, Japanese units were forced into frontal assaults against fortified positions. These attacks resulted in heavy casualties with minimal gains. The defeat at Khalkhin Gol shattered the myth of Japanese invincibility. It challenged long-held assumptions within the Imperial Japanese Army regarding doctrine, leadership, and strategic direction. Internally, the battle triggered reassessment. Reports reaching Tokyo highlighted the dangers of confronting the Soviet Union directly. The losses forced Japanese leadership to reconsider expansion strategies. Khalkhin Gol became a warning. It demonstrated the cost of miscalculation, and it revealed the limits of ideology in modern warfare. The battlefield fell silent, but the consequences of defeat were only beginning to unfold. By September 1939, the fighting at Khalkhin Gol had effectively ended. The Japanese forces, having suffered decisive defeat, withdrew from contested areas. Soviet and Mongolian troops consolidated their positions along the river. Although no formal declaration of war had ever been issued, the conflict concluded through diplomatic channels. A ceasefire agreement was reached on September 16, 1939. Both sides agreed to restore the status quo along the disputed border. For the Soviet Union and Mongolia, this outcome represented a clear strategic victory. For Japan, it marked an abrupt and sobering end to ambitions in the region. The timing of the ceasefire was significant. In Europe, the Second World War had already begun with the German invasion of Poland. Global attention shifted westward, and the events at Khalkhin Gol quickly faded from public awareness. Yet within military and political circles, the implications were profound. For Japan, the aftermath triggered intense internal debate. The defeat strengthened the position of the Strike South faction within the Japanese leadership. Expansion towards Southeast Asia and the Pacific now appeared more viable than confrontation with the Soviet Union. Khalkhin Gol effectively ended Japanese plans for northern expansion. The Imperial Japanese Army conducted internal reviews of the campaign. While some lessons were acknowledged, institutional resistance limited doctrinal reform. The Army remained focused on infantry-based operations, underestimating mechanized warfare despite clear evidence from Khalkhin Gol. The Soviet Union drew different conclusions. The success of combined arms tactics validated emerging doctrines emphasizing coordination between armor, infantry, artillery, and air power. Georgy Zhukov's victory enhanced his reputation, accelerating his rise within the Red Army. Diplomatically, the conflict reinforced Soviet influence in Mongolia. The border was stabilized, and Mongolia's role as a buffer state was secured. This stability allowed the Soviet Union to focus resources elsewhere as global war expanded. Khalkhin Gol also influenced Soviet strategic confidence. The Red Army's ability to defeat a modern, well-trained opponent bolstered belief in its reformed military capabilities, though later events would reveal remaining weaknesses. Despite its limited duration, the battle reshaped regional strategy. Japan would not challenge the Soviet Union again during the Second World War. Instead, its focus shifted toward the Pacific, culminating in conflict with the United States and its allies. The ceasefire ended the fighting, but it did not erase the consequences. Khalkhin Gol altered the strategic map of Asia and influenced decisions that shaped the broader war. The battle ended quietly. Its impact was anything but. The Battle of Khalkhin Gol occupies a unique position in 20th century military history. Although often overshadowed by larger conflicts, its consequences reach far beyond the Mongolian steppe. The battle reshaped strategic thinking, redirected imperial ambitions, and influenced the course of the Second World War. For Japan, Khalkhin Gol represented a decisive strategic turning point. The defeat demonstrated that the Soviet Union was not a weak or unprepared adversary. The Imperial Japanese Army, long confident in its offensive doctrine and battlefield spirit, was forced to confront the limitations of its approach. The belief that infantry determination alone could overcome modern firepower was fundamentally challenged. As a result, Japan abandoned its northern expansion strategy. The Strike North doctrine, which had envisioned conflict with the Soviet Union, lost credibility. In its place, the Strike South strategy gained dominance. This shift redirected Japanese expansion toward Southeast Asia and the Pacific, setting the stage for future confrontations with Western powers. The Soviet Union drew different conclusions. Khalkhin Gol validated emerging doctrines centered on combined arms warfare. The successful integration of armor, artillery, infantry, and air power demonstrated the effectiveness of coordinated operations. These lessons would later be applied on a far larger scale during the Second World War. The battle also elevated key individuals. Georgy Zhukov emerged as one of the Red Army's most capable commanders. His success at Khalkhin Gol established his reputation and influenced his later role in major battles against Nazi Germany. The confidence gained from this victory shaped Soviet leadership decisions in the years that followed. Strategically, Khalkhin Gol secured the Soviet Union's eastern frontier. With Japan no longer posing an immediate threat, Soviet planners could concentrate resources on Europe. This security proved critical when the Soviet Union later faced invasion from the West. Khalkhin Gol also highlighted the importance of logistics, intelligence, and adaptability. It underscored the dangers of rigid doctrine and the necessity of learning from battlefield realities. These lessons were absorbed unevenly but left a lasting imprint on military thought. Despite its significance, the battle remained largely absent from public memory. Its remote location, lack of formal war declaration, and coincidence with larger global events contributed to its obscurity. Yet within military history, Khalkhin Gol stands as a case study in decisive limited warfare. The conflict demonstrated how regional battles can influence global outcomes. Decisions shaped by Khalkhin Gol reverberated through subsequent campaigns, alliances, and strategies. Khalkhin Gol was not merely a border clash. It was a moment of strategic revelation, a battle that changed history, quietly, decisively, and permanently.